So this video is going to be about not just some of the best bikes you can buy, but the very best. This is the very best bicycle. If you are looking for an upright bike, I'm definitely not talking about all bicycles, because an upright bicycle cannot compete with a recumbent or a velomobile for speed. But this video is just going to be about the one upright bike you might want to buy if you are only going to have one bicycle. A lot of people who have several bikes, who have several of the bikes I have been recommending, and you should be checking out the links below. I do have a resource page where you can see all the bikes I am recommending. This model is one of those, but this is the bike if you only have money or space or patience for just one bike. By the way, if you are new to the channel, feel free to subscribe or hit the bell button. This channel is all about small wheel rides, not just bicycles, but obviously a lot of my attention currently is focused on the bike. So here we go. If I were to select the very best bicycle that the market has to offer right now as of 2023, I would have to have some criteria that would be the basis of my selection. Number one would be speed. It would not have to be the fastest bike out there, but it would have to be pretty fast if I was to consider it as the very best bike on the market. Probably most people would agree with me. My second criteria is a bit more unusual, because having owned folding bikes for quite some time, I am used to a certain amount of versatility on the bike. In other words, I'm not going to name a shopping bike or a cargo bike or a speed bike like a road bike with the bullhorn handlebars the very best bike on the market, unless it has enough versatility to allow me to use it for commuting, for travel. In other words, it has to be compact or foldable or separable, or in some ways made compact enough so that I can commute with it, can get it through the revolving door, can get it into the car. I don't have to stick it on top of the car or hang it behind. I should be able to cram it into a regular suitcase and put it on the plane. All of this I would expect from a top-end bike that is the very best. Then there is design. Everything I recommend on this website has excellent design. Everything looks great. Everything, whether it's a scooter, a motorcycle, a bicycle, even a car, has to look good. There's no question about that. If it's the top bike on the market, it has to be one of the best looking bikes as well. Quality, no question. If it's the best bike, it has to have good quality, which means it has to have very configurable gear ranges so that I can modify it, use it in various ways. It has to have excellent fit and finish. The paint, the metal plating, whatever they use to finish the frame has to look really, really good. And then there is durability. Durability means that the bike should last ideally the rest of my life if I take care of it. I really don't see why not. And finally, I expect good support. If this is a bike that's the best bike I can get for my money, and I'm only going to have one bike at home, then I definitely want all of the criteria, including support. If I need a part, I should be able to get it. I don't necessarily need to be able to tune it, because maybe it's such a good bike, I don't need to modify anything, but I certainly want the companies to support me for years and decades ahead. The current speed record for an upright bicycle is held by the Alex Moulton bicycle, which is one of the bikes I am recommending for a small wheel bike. Apparently, none of the big wheel bikes have been able to challenge this. This is a speed on flat ground, away from wind, measured indoors, that is above 50 miles an hour. How come nobody has challenged it? How come all these Olympic and Tour de France winners have not been able to knock out, say, 60 miles an hour with a full fairing. The main reason for that is the size of their wheel. The bigger the wheel, the more of a momentum you get on the downhills, but the heavier weight of the big wheel and the flexing of it is going to hold you back when you're taking it uphill, and depending upon the size, even on the flats. With the small wheels, if you have a very tiny wheel, it hardly has any weight or resistance on the uphills. It goes very fast, and it also accelerates faster. But then you have to handle the flats and the downhills. So you have to find a reasonable balance between the big wheel and the small wheel. And that balance is somewhere around the 20-inch range. And if you look at the top-end sports cars, the Porsches, the Ferraris, the Lamborghinis, the Corvettes, their wheel size all hover somewhere around the 20-inch range, and I have yet to see one that has a 28-inch wheel. The other part of the supremacy of the molten, especially the kind of molten that was used in this experiment, because there are various frame designs. This was a space frame, and the space frame design is based on the construction crane, which we have all seen in real life. That design is the lightest weight, sturdy design there is on the market. There is simply no alternative to it, and the more rigid you make your frame, the less energy you are going to lose as you pedal. Now, there was a suspension built into the molten, and I assume that if you removed the suspension or made it very, very hard, and maybe they did make it very hard, then the speed would have been even better. Nevertheless, to be able to crank out more than 50 miles an hour on an upright bicycle, even fully faired, is sensational. And that record was established in the 70s, and it has never been broken. What about versatility? Since I've been using folding bikes for the last 20 years or so, I'm used to the ability to fold them, get them into a revolving door, fold them into luggage, put them into the back of a car. In other words, I want a high-performance bike, but I also want it to be as compact as possible. It doesn't have to be the smallest bike. It doesn't have to compete with the Brompton in terms of foldability, and it doesn't even need to be foldable. If it can be partially disassembled or separated, or in some way made compact enough so that I can get through the revolving door and commute with it, easily move it around, that's going to be good enough for me, and this is one of my requirements. Here again, the molten is far above any other bicycle. This remarkable separable mechanism that was invented a decade ago saves all the trouble, the weight, and the complexity of folding hinges. So unlike with the folding bike, the separable molten models, and not all of them are separable, they do make models that are a single piece frame if you want that, and you want to save on the weight and everything even further. But the thing is, with the separable models, you don't add much weight by adding that one screw that runs across the frame to hold it together. And still the construction is very rigid. You have removed the weight and the complexity of a folding joint. So there is no joint, there is no folding. But on the other hand, you can separate the frame into two halves, and you can just Velcro or rope tie the two pieces together, and it looks just like a folding bike. It doesn't look any different, and you have to carry a hex key, but that's not a big deal. If you are really a molten fanatic, this can be done, and half of this bike is going to fit in any revolving door, and you can put the two halves into a luggage and carry it onto the airplane, and it's going to do almost everything you could do with a folding bike, but without the troublesome and heavy folding mechanism. Then there is design, and I absolutely love the design of the Birdie monocoque. I think it's a gorgeous design. The front of it with that foldable suspension mechanism is so unique. It's unlike any other bike. But the Birdie is not the only good-looking bike. In fact, the Molten of the two is the only one that is in the collection of any major museum. And the museum we are talking about is the Museum of Modern Art in Manhattan, and it is on display with some of the best industrial designs of the 20th century. So that should give some credit to the Molten. The Molten's frame itself is unlike anything else. No other bike looks quite like this. You can recognize the space frame from far, far away. Now there are some Molten bikes with different designs. In fact, the original design was not a space frame solution. This was an idea that Alex Moulton arrived at after many years of experimentation. And there are some modern, in my opinion, quite ugly Molten frames that are being manufactured now, but Alex Moulton died in his late 90s, so whoever is running the company now is trying to fix perfection, which I think is a dead end. So I don't like the newest frames, but the space frame is still being manufactured or fabricated in England. And it is a frame that is the most rigid. It's one of the most unique frames out there. And you look at the fit and finish, this is something you can't really see on pictures. I'm trying to show some better quality pictures where you really have to see a Molten bike, especially the higher end Molten bike, something above $5,000, to see what kind of a quality control this company has. The fit and finish, the details, the teeny tiny things connected to each other. The Birdie is kind of a it's like almost like a manufactured frame, whereas this is the Molten space frame really looks like something that was hand braced together piece by piece, and it probably was either welded or brazed or however it was put together by hand, and then it was carefully hand painted layer after layer with several layers of clear coat, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. Also, the componentry of the bike is typically high end, and the way it's put together is just so precise. It's one of the most beautiful bicycles on the market, I think. Then there is quality and durability. All of these frames, except maybe the most recent non-space frame bikes, are hand built in England. Even the fixtures and the various parts of the frame are made in-house. They are all handmade, and it's assembled with extreme precision that you have to see. You have to see the frame close up at a bike shop or wherever you can see it. It looks like a piece of jewelry running on two wheels. It's a work of art. It has been in the museum. I think it deservedly so. And for durability, it's very hard to rip apart or to bend a space frame. This is the most rigid structure that has ever been designed. That's why they use it for cranes, and this bicycle is using it as well. If you have a separable frame, there could be some problems there, but only after many, many years of abuse. You would really have to abuse the frame to rip it apart at the point where it separates. If you have a foldable bike, that's far easier to bend or to disfigure or destroy, because you drop a folded bike in an incorrect or half folded position, you can bend the joint. Once a joint is bent, there's no way to undo it. You have to buy a new frame. So that's not an issue with the Molten, because it's either a single piece or you can buy a separable frame. And in my opinion, if you take care of it, it should last a lifetime. Maybe you can even give it to your grandson. I should also add here that the Molten bike was the very first bicycle with a full suspension system. Both the front and the rear are suspended, and on the high-end models, the suspension, which is often a rubberized system, is actually adjustable, which is extreme. I have never even heard of a bicycle with an adjustable suspension, except some of the more intense, very expensive off-road bikes, and typically it is in the front, not so much in the rear. Molten was the first, and Alex Moulton's father own the rubber factory, so that's where the rubberized design comes from. It is definitely a unique feature, and among small wheel bikes, you really cannot get a more comfortable ride than what you would get with the Molten. And you can also configure it with the 20-inch rim size. You can get some pretty wide, pretty comfortable tires to run the bike with as well. Finally, I should mention support. Since this company has been around since the 1960s, they are over a half century old, and they have gone through some financial drama here and there. But if they have survived 60 years, they are very likely going to survive for decades longer. And everything is made in-house. All of the components of the frame, with few exceptions, especially if you're getting the space frame, are made in-house. So if they don't have any more parts for you, they can actually fabricate one. And given that this bicycle is the Rolls-Royce of the bicycle world, it is very likely that they will protect the brand, and they will do whatever, they will bend over backward to make sure that if you have trouble with your frame and you need a part, then you can get that part. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to get to Molten. There is significant following to it in the Far East. There is a very minor following in the US. And of course, there are the European distributors. But you can go directly to the company. This is a fairly small operation, given the rank of the company. But you could say the same about Rolls-Royce, especially before BMW bought them. They were never a people's car, so this company doesn't crank out millions of frames every year, but whatever frames they do crank out are well made, first of all, and they are also well supported. Where can you get a Molten? As I suggested earlier, the Molten bike is not a people's bike. It's a very expensive bicycle for the most part, although lower level models can be had for less than $3,000, but they go all the way up to $17,000 US. So it's not going to be in your neighborhood store. You can always head to the website of the mother company in the UK, but there are also Far Eastern distributors, and there is Porta-Pedal Bike in the US. I believe they are somewhere close to the Northwest. They will also configure the frame for you. They will put in whatever wheels and tires you want, whatever brakes and configuration you want in general. I would say if I'm spending this kind of money on a bicycle, if I'm going above $4,000, say, I would probably want a custom paint job, custom wheels, so a lot of customization, so that I don't have to tune the bike. Once I get the bike at this price range, I get what I wanted. And so you can always contact the London office, and they are going to put you in touch with the local distributor, whatever part of the world you happen to live in. So it is possible to get it. If you want a custom configuration, you're probably going to have to wait for it. Even if you don't, probably you are going to wait for it, because this is not a frame that most bike shops are going to keep in stock. And most people at this price range will want them in custom colors and configurations anyway. So this is more like something that you pre-order. You order the bike and wait a month, 2 months. I'm assuming this is the same thing. If you want a really nice Rolls-Royce, you also want customization, and they have a zillion features that you can configure, and obviously it's going to take a while before they actually hand fabricate the car to your specifications. So that's about the same thing with this bicycle. This is all I had to say. I think the Molten Space frame is still the king of all bicycles. If you only want one bike, and if you have the money for it, then this is the thing to get. Now, most people didn't get into biking by buying a Molten for $10,000. So most of these Molten owners have a Brompton or a Birdie, or both of them, maybe even a Bike Friday at home. And they might not be using those anymore, or not as much as they use their Molten. But for most people who are into high-end cycling and small wheel bicycles, it takes a few years to get there, but it's worth it. So this is my video on the very best bicycle you can buy as of 2023. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and I'll see you in the next video.